Bob Cringely, and around me you can hear the noise of money being made and lost. This is one of the pits at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where trading currency and financial products has become the biggest business in the world. How did that happen? Where is it going? What does it mean to you and me? That's what this program is all about. The second episode of Electric Money.
No matter how much fun you were having on the farm, sooner or later you headed for the big city. Chicago has always been the hub of the agricultural heartland of America. Here they traded wheat, cattle, and pork bellies. In 1848, the Chicago Board of Trade was formed as a clearinghouse for beef and grain. And in 1874, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for less glamorous things like butter and eggs. Dealers worked in pits, trading commodities on behalf of their clients. An elaborate system of hand signals evolved that meant buy or sell and how much. But it was low tech. Even in 1940, prices were still written on a blackboard by hand. Well, it looks a whole lot different today.
This is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, commonly called the Merc. It's the biggest marketplace on earth. When this place was started, they traded eggs and onions, but today they mainly trade things called futures, options, and indices, which are all different ways of looking at money. Lots of money, trillions and trillions of dollars.
Today, technology has transformed the commodity business. The Chicago Board of Options Exchange has 5,500 computer screens under one roof. Over at the Merc, it takes 87,000 feet of cable to power all the electronics. At the same time, the Merc traders still rely on the world's oldest technologies, hand signals and shouting. It's called open outcry. A hand facing towards you means buy. A hand facing away means sell. One finger straight up means buy one, two fingers two, and so on. Take a good look at Chicago's trading pits in full cry. It's an awesome sight, but history shows us that when technology competes with human muscle, there's only one winner, and it won't be hand signals. So what exactly are these guys buying and selling? Mostly it's something called a future. And what's that? A good place to explain might be a fast food restaurant.
I love their bacon cheeseburger. So let's say I run a fast food chain and I want to know how much the beef in this burger is going to cost so I can be sure to make a profit. We know the price of beef today. It's a price 6 months from now that we worry about. So what I do is I call up a commodities trader in Chicago. He's Vic, and I ask Vic to buy me some cattle futures. That is, I agree to pay a certain amount, say $2 a pound, for beef delivered 6 months from now. Now, for the fast food business, this is great because it creates predictability. I know exactly how much I'll pay for beef 6 months from now. And it's not so bad either for the farmer. Here he is, McDonald, because now he knows what he'll get for his beef 6 months from now, and he can make sure that he makes a profit too. Now, in the intervening 6 months, the price of beef actually goes up and down, and so does the value of that futures contract. In fact, old Vic here at the Merc, he probably buys and sells that contract several times, making more money along the way. In this sense, the futures contract comes to have a life of its own that has nothing to do with the farmer or with me. This is how businesses protect themselves from unexpected changes in the prices of commodities. Futures are now available for lots of different products, everything from heating oil to currencies.
How did the Merc go from a sleepy backwater for selling butter and eggs to the trillion-dollar marketplace it is today? It's a story that involves a trader, a president, and 2 college professors. The trader was this man, Leo Melamed.
Sell 5 more.
So 20 plus 2?
Go to the market, the whole thing.
After starting out as a trader in the pits, Leo was elected to head the Merc in 1969. He quickly realized the Merc needed to grow.
So I was desperately looking around for different markets for futures. We tried potatoes, we tried apples, we tried shrimp, turkeys, you name it, we tried it. And none of those things worked too well. As you can tell in history, there isn't much of a futures market in Turkey.
Leo didn't know it yet, but the world was about to present an opportunity that would change the Merc forever. Until 1971, all the currencies of the world were valued relative to the dollar, and the price of the dollar tied to gold. $35 were worth an ounce of gold. This meant currency prices were fixed and exchange rates stable. American tourists could go just about anywhere and know what they'd get for their buck. This is where an American president enters the story. The Vietnam War put an end to this age of stability. President Nixon had a problem financing the war. He needed more dollars, but as long as the dollar was tied to gold, his dollar supply was limited. So he broke the link. He decided America would no longer guarantee to pay out an ounce of gold for $35.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
2F3F. Hey, 2F3F.
With the end of the gold standard in 1971, the world's currencies began fluctuating in value relative to each other. Leo Melamed wondered why the Merc couldn't be the first market for the buying and selling of money itself.
This was very problematic. Why hadn't anybody thought of this before? I kept saying to myself, why? Why am I the only one? I'm not even an economist. But there is no such thing as a futures market in finance. Why? When in fact, everything I knew about futures market indicated and dictated to me that it would make a better futures market in finance than it does in agriculture. You weren't subject to weather changes. It was pure supply-demand economics. And that's easier to use and easier to figure out than, you know, how many eggs a chicken will lay.
Melamed decided to try the idea out on an old friend and mentor, free market economist Milton Friedman.
I knew I would have to go to Milton Friedman and put it to him and say to him, listen, I got this idea to trade currency futures. Can currency work in a futures market, or am I way off the base? And the minute he heard the question, he said, my God, that's brilliant. He said, absolutely, do it.
Up to this point, there had been no futures markets in financial instruments. All futures markets had been in commodities. So this was an innovation in 2 respects. First, that it happened to be dealing with foreign exchange. But second, that it was to be a futures market in financial instruments rather than in physical commodities.
I said, wait a minute. You saying it to me, nobody will believe you said this to me. Will you put this in writing? He said, I'm a capitalist. I said, how much? He said, $5,000. I'll write you a paper. I said, do it.
So I wrote the piece, and he used that in going to Washington and getting approval of his establishing the IMM.
Government regulators gave the okay, and in 1972, the international monetary market was born. By the end of the first year, 135,000 currency futures had changed hands. In the next 2 decades, that number would increase to 16 million annually.
Chicago quickly became the most important center for financial transactions of all kinds.
It's exponential in terms of volumes that it created. It's mind-boggling. Once finance became a tool of futures markets, we were like kids in a candy store. We started with currencies, let's go to interest rates, let's go to this, let's go to that.
As well as futures, these traders are also buying and selling options. An option is another way of reducing risk. You pay a premium for the right to buy or sell a stock or commodity on a certain date at a certain price. But unlike a future contract, you don't have to exercise your right. It's a complicated transaction, and back in the 70s, it was even harder to do because no one could work out what the right price of an option should be. So trading in options was small scale. Then in 1973, two college professors devised a mathematical formula that priced an option. And that changed everything.
As long as the souffle is ready.
One of those mathematicians was Myron Scholes. His partner, Fisher Black, died in 1995. They would end up winning the Nobel Prize for their work.
The value of the option is equal to the value of the stock price. I was working with a colleague, Fisher Black, and we combined our energies and efforts and were able to come up with a differential equation which described the change in the value of the option as a function of things which were pretty observable. You needed to rely on an interest rate. You had to rely on a volatility estimate because the value of the option depended only on volatility. And D2 is equal to D1 minus sigma root T.
Got that? If not, don't feel bad. Nobel Prize winners don't speak the same language we do. The gist of it is that the Black-Scholes formula allowed traders in the pits to figure out what an option ought to sell for. And once they had a way to price options, options trading became huge.
Everything that we do is based on a bet. We don't know whether that software program has a use. We don't know whether a movie that we might invest $100 million in will have an audience. And we don't know whether a drug that's designed today and might cost $500 million to bring into production will work. But if we have some equations that we can use to calculate essentially the risk factor and the potential value of those investments, then we can make those investments with a lot more certainty.
Today, the Merc is part of a global trading system that never sleeps. From this building alone, there's a flow of digital information that translates into $200 trillion a year changing hands. And the financial instruments being traded are so complex that nobody could keep track of them. That is, without computers.
We realized that we couldn't match the trades by hand because it was too daunting a task. So our markets were open from 9 to 2. The matching process then went on from 2 to whatever time until all the trades were matched so that you could begin the next day fresh. Well, Harvey was the matcher. He was the head of the clearinghouse. He had a band of 3-4 people. He wore an eye shade. He wore sleeves rolled up. He said, we can't do this. We're working till 2, 3 in the morning. There's only one solution, Leo. You have to close down the hours of trade so that you guys don't trade so much. It was dead serious. Well, you know, man was nuts. Because it's certainly not the direction I was trying to go. So it was obvious we needed some other kind of Harvey here. And that Harvey ended up to be an IBM machine. And we went for the first computer to clear the trades. It wasn't to drive the market. It was just to clear the trades and get them so that they could match faster than Harvey could do, and we could expand our trade, and computers allowed that to happen.
The option formula invented by Scholes and Black was far too complicated for a pit trader to understand, let alone use. It needed something else to make it user-friendly. What else but a computer?
When the Chicago Board of Options Exchange came into existence, Fisher Black printed out sheets of paper which would have, for various stock prices, what the Black-Scholes option value would be. And those sheets would be carried around on the floor of the Chicago Board of Options Exchange by the younger traders. And over time, what would happen would be, as these calculators came out, people can put their own numbers in, and then they had machines on the edge of the floor of the Chicago Board Options Exchange that people can go to actually do the computations and calculations.
What are the people standing around us doing?
They are the people that believe that the Black-Scholes model in their computer is correct. In other words, that all those numbers are correct. Because since they haven't got the time to figure out if they are or they aren't, they got to sit there and say, well, 2 1/4 I'll sell them at a half. Without having any idea what it's really worth. They trust the system. They are converters of risk.
The computer also allowed information to be driven faster. So therefore, the market that I was creating was in fact part of the information age that was driven by the computer.
Short or long is delta, but there is another number called gamma, which essentially is the rate of change of the delta. The handhelds that you use will tell you your delta and your gamma, and probably the most important really is your gamma, because that tells you which way is your risk.
Computers and the global information network meant that traders in Chicago were buying and selling with traders in Tokyo, London, and Bangkok. Almost overnight, the digital revolution had turned the world into a vast global marketplace unimaginable just a few decades before.
When I began this market, it wasn't even on the map. It was nothing. It was a backwater exchange trading in eggs and pork bellies. So we became a third of this $80 trillion market that's worldwide, and the $80 trillion is beyond anyone's comprehension. What can I say? I don't know how to answer it better than what I just did.
But technology can be a two-edged sword, as the traders in London have discovered.